The big confession that would have changed the course of history in a better way. I should have done this during the 2016 Democratic Convention. I wanted to do the right thing and ask the delegates to elect Bernie Sanders as the presidential nominee, and I hoped that he would have agreed that I should be his presidential running mate. But the consultocracy which surrounds me and the billionaire oligarchs who paid me said, no way. I know with this pronouncement, all my supporters in the boardrooms of America's multinational corporations are muttering how it is getting harder to buy a politician that will not throw you a curve. But hey, all those $250,000 per speech fees I got were great tax write-offs for your corporations. And you can flee to one of your many houses spread across the globe. Sorry guys, but here are the reasons I should have conceded to Bernie Sanders. All the national polls, even the ones commissioned by the major media which did everything to suppress Bernie's campaign, showed that Bernie would clearly defeat Trump and I would have had a more difficult time defeating Trump. Looking back at the 2016 election and quoting the NBC News Survey Monkey Weekly Election Tracking Poll found that if the 2016 presidential election were held today, 53 to 40% of voters would elect Sanders over Donald Trump, which is more than double the margin that Hillary Clinton holds over the presumptive Republican nominee. Even though my very good friends like Deborah Wasserman Schultz, then chair of the Democratic National Committee, and friends in the major media pulled every dirty trick to derail Bernie's campaign, he still ranked way ahead of me in the national polling matchup against Trump. I did not want to help the Democratic Party commit suicide by nominating me. I am thinking of my daughter's generation who voted overwhelmingly for Bernie and not for me. Bernie was their last hope, since he, unlike me, is not beholden to the corporations and individuals destroying our air, water, and food, or to the banks that have this generation deeply in debt with student loans above market rates. Now here we are in 2020, and there were a few presidential candidates with enough overlap in values and policies to Bernie that sanity should have compelled the Democratic Party oligarchy and major media establishment to not commit the same mistake as in 2016 and propel Joe Biden to the front-runner position. Unfortunately, bad history has repeated itself in a time of great need to not repeat the same errors. I also want to take this opportunity to come clean about failed policies and actions. Bernie is against all the things I pushed on the world when I was Secretary of State, like our extreme and dirty extractive technologies like fracking, which contaminates the water tables we need for drinking and irrigation, and the genetically modified crops that my friends at Monsanto, now owned by Bayer, use to monopolize and weaken the food system. Bernie does not have the blood on his hands that I do. I refuse to call the military overthrow of the Honduran government a coup and supported them with more military aid, which emboldened the military to assassinate many peaceful activists, like Goldman Environmental Prize winner Berta Cáceres. Admittedly, I got foreign policy advice from Henry Kissinger, who is considered a war criminal in some countries. I have encouraged military aid to most regimes in Central and South America and the then corrupt government in Mexico, who killed as many innocent civilians as the drug gangs they are supposed to be stopping. Of course, every attempt to elect a reform candidate in Central American countries ends up being a fraudulent one and returns the same corrupt cast of characters to power. I endorse these fraudulent election results since they support the multinational corporations who have contributed heavily to my campaigns and to my husband's. Honduras is the shining example of failed policy, as well as the recent coup that took place in Bolivia. No wonder we have a flood of illegal immigrants from our southern borders. The citizens of those countries will do anything to escape the deadening poverty and violence which I helped create by supporting the overthrow of democratically elected governments and by supporting fraudulent elections all over the globe. In the last 2 years, the vast majority of illegal migrants crossing our southern border comes from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, countries that we have destabilized. It should be noted that a Pew Research study indicates that now more Mexicans return to live in Mexico than cross into the U.S. border illegally. Comparatively fewer Nicaraguans attempt the illegal crossings of our southern border, even though we have attempted unsuccessfully in recent years to destabilize that progressive elected government via the CIA masquerading as NGOs. We use U.S. agencies such as USAID and the Office of Transition Initiatives. These agencies in Latin America serve the U.S. government via the CIA on high-tech propaganda and destabilization programs in both Nicaragua and Cuba. Largely, the same destabilizing techniques are used on Venezuela. Venezuela is one of the few countries that has large oil reserves and acts independently. So our government illegally seizes or impounds their assets, approximately $7 billion worth so far. Additionally, we cut them off from financial markets in an attempt to force the government to accept a compliant American puppet, Guaido, who will allow our government's exploitation of their natural resources. Of course, we cannot easily do the same to Russia, China, or France, since they are nuclear armed and have militaries not under our thumb. As many as 40,000 people may have died in Venezuela as a result of U.S. sanctions that have made it harder for ordinary citizens to access food, medicine, and medical equipment, detailed in a new report published by the Center for Economic and Policy Research as of April 2019. I can see Trump is trying to one-up my deadly decisions with his appointments of the twins of torture and evil in foreign policy, Elliott Abrams, a convicted criminal, and John Bolton, now replaced with another ultra-hawk, Robert O'Brien. Elliott Abrams is busy orchestrating malfeasance south of our border, and O'Brien in Iran. These three have never seen a corrupt dictatorship they did not like. The key to surviving a covert or an overt attempt by the U.S. to overthrow a country's government is to give U.S. corporations almost unlimited access to your natural resources and or be a major buyer of U.S. arms sales, such as Saudi Arabia. Hopefully, the person some call the Bernie Sanders of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, AMLO, who won a hard-to-steal vote, will not be assassinated or deposed via corrupt means, given that the multinationals who donated to me, and even more to Trump, want him gone. Hopefully, he will be able to implement some of his reform programs to mitigate some of the inequality in Mexico. Some may remember AMLO won the 2006 election, but in an obvious soft coup, the U.S. supported the major fraud that took place during the vote count, and Calderón was selected by the elites and indirectly by the USA as president. 60,000 people were killed by the end of his administration via the American taxpayer-supported phony drug war. So far, 132 reform candidates have been murdered in recent Mexican elections, many with the help of U.S. taxpayer money. The ties between the Mexican army, which we largely fund, and the drug cartels are well documented. I was very much part of this deadly use of taxpayer dollars, and Trump continues the slaughter. It is the harvest of our empire coming back to haunt us.